great to see y'all. Welcome to Creekside. My name is Wes Spencer. I'm one of the pastors here. And if it's your first time, we are super, super glad that you are with us. We are finishing up into the tail end of 2 Samuel. So don't feel like you came at the wrong time. I promise you there'll be some really amazing things that are happening and even late into this book that will be very, very powerful for you. And also to the folks at Worship in the Loft is what we call it. We don't call it Overflow anymore. I have to keep teasing Jake for that. It is upstairs. I just want to say thank you for people that are just saying, hey, we'll take a sacrifice and we'll go upstairs. Thank you for doing that. That is super amazing. I really appreciate your sense of sacrifice. So we all know as Floridians, if you're visiting, you probably have heard it spoken before, it's hurricane season. We know what that's like. We watch the maps. We get ready for it. We know, like, when you're out of towners, like, I heard there's a hurricane. You're like, dude, I've been watching that one for like a week now. Like, yeah, I know there's a hurricane coming. It's always funny how that works, right? And last year, we had some friends that were coming down from Kentucky. I've lived in Kentucky for many, many years. And they said they love to come down and visit. We went to high school with them, college. Our kids grew up together, all that good stuff. And so we always try to spend some really good, meaningful time. And they tend to come down to Tampa once, sometimes twice a year and spend some time with us. And so it happened to be right as Milton was kind of coming right at us. And as all Floridians do, we're like, don't worry about it. It's fine. Like, it's no big deal. It's just a hurricane. We're fine. We've been through these a million times, right? And they're like, oh, okay, sure, sounds good. So they pack up their bags and they're driving and they're watching the maps like we watch the maps, except they're watching like the mainstream guys, the doom and gloom, whereas we watch like the Twitter feeds of like the Independents, and all that. And so they get to Atlanta and they text us and they're like, this is like a Category 5 mega colossal storm. They're like, we're not coming down. This is crazy. I'm like, come on, we got batteries. Like, it'll be fun. It's like camping, it'd be great. Like, also, it's summertime and no AC. So they said, look, we're not coming. Like, we're going to stay in Atlanta. We went up north into the mountains. We found an Airbnb, a great price, last minute. You can come join us or not. We know you're not working this week, so you might as well come. And I'm like, man, I didn't want to be that Floridian that evacuates early, like lose all my cred. But they knew that we were free, and so I'm like, okay, we'll go up and we join them. So we do. We have a great time. We enjoy all the time up there to see them. And, I'm getting texts from all of y'all of like all the wildness that's going on, right? And man, a lot of us lost homes. There's flooding and tree damage, and we know it was pretty significant, right? And so we're starting to pack our bags to come back home. And normally to get back from that area, it's like 6 or 7 hours, something like that, to get home. And it's maybe a little bit more, closer to 12 before we finally got home. And it was wild. But I remember this. Just in the craziness, there's sort of a sadness that comes over when you have that much damage, have that much just everything been upset. And for us, we were out, even after we got home, we were without power for maybe a week and a half. It was a good long time. And so we would come, our family's a shower here, so we would come in at night after, a hot day. We would come in, we'd take a shower and just kind of clean up and spend some time. It ended up being great. You have your battery-powered lights and you got your, you read books and play board games. The family's like really cool. I really enjoyed all that. But I'll tell you one thing that was really pretty amazing is, seeing after all that storm, I remember sitting on a rocking chair over there. And I got a picture for you of just a few days after when we had gotten home of Creekside. And look at this. I mean, it's beautiful. I always joke and say we're like either ditch side or creekside or lakeside or whatever. And this is like swamp side, the water is all the way up to the mulch. But isn't it beautiful? The birds are already back and the sun was setting and we're finally cleaned off from a hot day. I mean, it was just peaceful. It was serene. It was amazing. There's a lesson here, is that storms are not always permanent. They will come. They will pass. And in their passing, sometimes they leave behind a beauty. And as we're going to see today in 2 Samuel, David's storm was not wind and rain. David's storm was betrayal, rebellion, heartbreak. But it didn't last forever. And there's a beauty that came through at the end. So here's your job today. Come buckled up. If you're a note taker, get ready. The first half of the sermon is going to be hard. Second half is going to be beautiful. And it's going to be really good. So let's remember what happened in 2 Samuel so far. I'm not going to do a long lesson, but just so if you're new with us, King David had he committed a grievous sin. He saw a woman bathing on the roof from his tower, and he decided he wanted that woman, as if he didn't already have enough women. So he commands and has her brought in. He violates her. He has her husband killed to cover up for the sins once he realizes that she's pregnant. And all of a sudden, God says, no, this is not how we act. This is not how you're to be. And so God sends a prophet named Nathan to come and confront and rebuke King David for his actions. And we're not going to read it, but it's over in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 10. It's basically God says to him, look, because you've committed these sins, and because of this guilt, the sword, God says, is never going to leave your house. For the rest of your days, you are going to struggle with turmoil, strife, and even from within your own family will arise the sword against you. And so David has been seeing all of this happen. You see, David had a son named Absalom. Very good-looking man. The Bible describes him as flawless, and he murdered his brother. He became estranged from his father over that murder and over a revenge killing, and eventually, he decided after years and years and years that he was a better king, he thought, than David would be. And through flattery and deceit, he launches a rebellion, takes over the kingdom, and King David, who is God's anointed king, is now running away from Jerusalem in tears and in anguish. And finally, we saw last week that there was a big battle that occurred, and Absalom had the upper hand in every way. He had more men. He was more ready. His guys were more fresh. And I think at the end, before the battle began, we saw David say something last week that I want to remind you of. You remember what David said with his son Absalom? He said, I understand there's got to be a battle, but he said, will you deal gently with my son? Or actually, the young man is what he says. Deal gently with him for my sake. And I was thinking about this week. I think David knew that God was going to give his army victory. He knew that this was probably going to be bad for Absalom and his men. And so his ask to his people was, will you be gracious with him? Will you let it go down with him gently? Don't harm him? But you see, we have a problem here because the men under David's command had no interest in this. And what we saw happen in the battle is Absalom got caught in a tree, and David's general, a man named Joab, comes up and kills him. Straight up murders him. And we see a tension that we're left with that we're going to pick up back with today. It's this tension of this. David wants mercy. The people want justice. And we can never truly have pure mercy and pure justice together. It's impossible. It cannot be done. I cannot be execute perfect justice for what people need and also perfectly merciful. And we're going to see this tension play out. And of course, we're going to see ultimately how only Jesus can solve this challenge of being just and merciful at the same time. So here's what happened. We're going to pick back up in chapter 18 of verse 31. So if you want to flip over to there. And what happened just before this is the battle's over. Absalom has died as a rebel and as an enemy. And God has spared David and his people. We know this. And the thing is, though, David is not yet aware, right? They don't have phones in those days. So someone's got to carry the message to David that we have won the battle, that God has given us victory. Someone's got to do that. And so there's a young man named Ahimaaz that comes up. He's like, I'll do it. I'll give him the news. And Ahimaaz has given news to David before. He loves to do it. He's apparently a very young man. He's very fast. He's fleet on his feet, all of that. He's like, I'll run. I don't care how many miles it is. I got it. I'll give the message, right? And what happens here is that Joab is like, no, not you, bud. And I think the reason why Joab did not want Ahaz this time to go to share the message was simply because of this. He knew that David sometimes had a tendency when Saul was killed, when others were killed that he's close to, and someone gives the message, he has them killed for it because they're trying to do it for their own glory. And so Joab's probably like, I don't want you to do this. So he sends his servant, a Cushite man. Cushites were near Egypt. And so he says, you go. And Ahimaaz is like, fine, you're the boss, but can I just go afterward? Can I just follow him? And Joab's like, fine, but you're not going to get a reward for it. He's like, I don't care. I just want to go. He's like, okay. So then what happens is the Cushite man starts running, and Ahimaaz takes a different pathway, a longer pathway, but because he's faster on his feet, he actually gets to David first. So let's look at what happens in verse 31. And behold, actually, sorry, let me recap that because we're going to skip that part too. So sorry. So what happens is he comes up to David and he says, all right, David, he goes, we won the battle. You would think David would be like, hallelujah. Thank God. How did it fare with our people? How many are left? What's next? He didn't ask any of that. Not a single thing. He asks one question. He says to Ahimaaz, what about my son? Is he okay? Did he make it? And Ahimaaz doesn't know. He's like, well, there's a commotion. I don't know. I didn't see. I think he's being truthful. So now let's pick up in verse 31, because now the Cushite man has shown up from the race. And so, behold, the Cushite came, and the Cushite said, good news for the Lord the king, for the Lord has delivered you this day from the hand of all who rose up against you. And the king said to the Cushite, is it well with my son Absalom? And the Cushite answered, may the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up against you for evil be like that young man. And the king was deeply moved and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he wept, he said, oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would I have died instead of you, oh, Absalom, my son, my son. So let's see what's happening here. So the Cushite man comes up, and again, David asked the same exact thing. He doesn't care about anything else. What about Absalom? Thank you for coming up here. It's fine. Victory's great. Sure, whatever. But what about my kid? What about Absalom? What's his fate? Did he make it? And you can sort of see the pause. The Cushite man is kind of being a little careful here. Doesn't want to just say, yo, yeah, your son died. Sorry. He's smarter than that. And so what does he say? Well, he says, may everyone who rise against you be like that young man. It's an elegant way to say, when I said you got victory, and the Lord has given it, it's over everyone. They all perished. And like a sledgehammer, those words smashed into David's heart. And what do we see him understand? The thing that he feared the most. The thing he asked for before battle, deal gently with him. After the battle, did he make it? His all unwound, and now he's learned that Absalom is dead. And if we can bring verse 33 back up, look how David even reacts. It says that he was deeply moved. What this means is he literally was shaking in agony and shaking in sorrow. Have you been there before? Many of you have. You have had something happen in your life that you are inconsolable, and you're just sitting here and you're shaking with grief. And this is what's happening with David. He's absolutely heartbroken. And for the first time, do you see what he says? Not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times. He calls him, after 10 years of being that young man, my son. My son, my son, my son, my son. He finally has understood. My son has been killed, and he's struggling with this. He's overcome with grief and with despair. I have no doubt in my mind that in this moment, all of what Nathan prophesied from God has come true front and center in his life, and he knew he could not escape it, that the sword will not leave you, and that it will come from your own family. And now he understands the gravity of what his sin has led to. And this is where we're at. And for the first time, he calls him my son. For the first time, he says, I wish I had died instead of you. I would have traded, as any parent would do. Any good dad or mom among us right now would say, I would happily trade myself for my child. So we see the anguish and the sadness of a father, of dealing with this. And there's nothing that David could do about it. David understands, it's done. I'm not getting Absalom back. That's the end of it. The last and only thing David has left is nothing but regret. You know, on one hand, we can criticize David for this. And I read a lot of commentators this week that did. David, you're the king. You had 20,000 people die that day. And you don't care about any of them? You think they didn't lose sons too? You don't think they lost fathers as well? You don't think families fell apart for them too? And all you care about is your son? And I get that. I get the anger because he's king. I see it. But can we just take a minute and step into a father's shoes? Can we understand what this must have been like? Because I will tell you, as a father, I would wonder and I would worry and I would be anguished over the exact same thing. My oldest is now 16 years old. I got 3 more behind him, and they're not far off. My math tells me I have 2 years left with my oldest. At that point, he's off to the races. And the older I get, the more this story of David and his children and these actions, this is not some distant history lesson. This is tugging at my own heart. The truth of this is that as a father, as a mother, when that little baby, when it lands in our arms for the first time, it is a beautiful thing, but it comes with a special anxiety, doesn't it? You know what I mean by this. This concern we have for them. It's full of care, for sure, full of love, but full of labor over them, full of anxiety for them. What's God going to do in their lives, and will they follow him, and where are they going to go, and who are they going to meet, and where are they going to get married, and where are they going to live, and will it go well with them? Just like David asked. I was looking at this, and one of the things I think that's true is it's actually not the younger years that are the hardest. And you parents of young family or young kids, you're like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not saying I've answered this. My oldest is 16, but I'm starting to understand that it's the older years that are harder. Why? Because in the older years, that's when they get older and they prepare to leave the nest. And that's when it all comes true. That's when we really see, who are my kids? And I don't say that to give you fear. I say to give you encouragement. Look what Spurgeon said about this. I want to read a quote. He was one of the greatest preachers ever. And I want to read something he said about this exact same passage. Spurgeon said, "But our children, perhaps, do not give us most anxiety when they're infants, nor when we have them at school and when we can put them to bed and give them a good night's kiss and feel that all is safe. The heavy care comes afterward. Afterwards, when they've broken through our control, when they're running alone and on their own account, when they're away from our home and they're out of the reach of our rebuke and do not now feel as once they did the power of our authority and hardly of our love." Wow. You see, this is when our trial begins. When we thought that we did the best that we could, and maybe we did, and they walk away. No interest in anything that we thought that we instilled in them. You see, this is the regret that David has. Now, I know the difference with David that you're probably thinking, same that I'm thinking. David never invested in Absalom. In fact, he kept him at arm's length. I don't even want to talk to you. I'm not even going to call you my son. So there's a large degree in which David is reaping what he's sown from his failure to be a father to invest in his kid. So of course this is going to happen, for sure. But that doesn't negate sorrow and regret over it. No question. And so I just want to take a minute and unpack this for us because there's a lot to say here. Maybe you were a child and you grew up in a household, in a family where your parents loved you. Your parents cared for you. Your parents shared Jesus with you. You understood the gospel at a young age. Maybe you even came to faith in a young age. Maybe it was later in life. I want to ask you this. When if your parents are still around, when is the last time you sent them a text message? You gave them a call and you just said, thank you. I just want to thank you. Because you invested in me. And I know to this day, you probably still have worries. Am I everything that you wanted? All the prayers you've labored, all the tears before the kingdom. I just want you to know, thank you. Thank you for what you've done. Thank you for your investment. I challenge you this week to go and thank them. But, maybe you had parents who never invested in you. They never shared Christ with you. Maybe you didn't even have parents. At no point have you ever had your parents even pray over you. I ask you this, will you commit to being the very first, to breaking all of those old ways and starting a new tradition in your household? Will you say, this house will serve the Lord? So that one day, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, your own children will rise up and call you blessed. Will rise up and say, thank you for what you've poured into me. Those tears, those prayers, that labor, that anxiety over me. Thank you. And you young folks today, you college kids, you high schoolers, you middle schoolers, I got a word for you too. Will you understand when your parents are crying over you, they're praying for you, they're caring for you. They're not just beating down on you. They're not just trying to force a holiness standard on you without any love. They care for you. They want you to understand and know who Jesus is. Stop rolling your eyes at them. Stop just saying, oh, you old, that's old school in your old ways. They care, and they are just like David. Is my child safe? That is your mom and dad's way of saying, I don't know about you. And I don't know where you're going yet. And I don't know your future. And I'm worried and I'm laboring in prayer over you. Understand that. So now I think we can understand David's grief. There's no question now he understands the weight of the mistakes that he made, the failures that he made. And no question, the better time for him to have asked, is Absalom okay, was 20 years ago when he was a baby in his arms. He missed that chance. And that hurts. And now he sees the ramifications of it. So if you're a parent here today, are you asking that question? Is my child safe? I don't mean safe from physical harm. I mean safe in the arms of Jesus. And if they're not, are you laboring over them and in them and with them and around them? I hope that you are. Now is the time to invest. Now is the time to pour into them. You know, a blacksmith is an amazing trade to watch because they take that piece of iron, block shape that it is, and they throw it in the furnace, and they push up the billows, they push up the heat, and with tongs they pull out that red hot piece of metal, and then and only then, when it's red hot, can they bang on it, can they fashion it, can they carve it, can they chisel it into the nature in which they want it to become. In the same way, you have time. Your children are that. When that iron gets black and cold and hard, it does not fashion any longer. Don't hear me to say that your children now is the only time, and if you missed it, that they're black and that it is iron and can never be repaired again. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, your young children are moldable. Invest in them. Spend time with them. I don't care if you're tired at night. Do it anyway. Some of the best memories will come from those moments where you don't have the energy. You don't think you have the time. Do it then. Pray over them. Pray with them. Talk to them about their little hearts. Ask them. And I will tell you this, if you're struggling with that, we're here to help you. We have a family pastor who's dedicated this. If you don't know Pastor Kyle, I'll introduce you to him. Nothing would make him happier than you come and saying, I need help. I don't know what to do. Come talk to us. We're here for that, but no, it's your responsibility. We'll point the way. We'll lead you. We'll hold your hand. We'll pull you with us, but it's your job, okay? So now we understand just the weight that he has. But I understand one last thing to say on this, because I'm not going to leave you here. Some of you are listening right now, and you have those regrets like David. And you're saying in your heart, I missed that chance. Maybe because you became a believer late in life and you missed it. Maybe because you just didn't invest when you should have. Work caught you up. The trivialities of this world caught you up. Whatever it is, and you missed it and you have regrets because you have that wayward child. I will not let you go on that. Stay with me. There is more to say in this passage, and there is deep encouragement that will come from the words of Jesus. Will you stay with me? Look at chapter 19. It was verse 1. It was told to Joab, behold, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom. So the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the people, and the people heard that day, the king is grieving for his son. And the people stole into the city that day as people steal in, who are ashamed when they flee in battle. The king covered his face, and the king cried with a loud voice, my son Absalom, oh Absalom, my son, my son. So we can see that David is not putting on a show. Now days have gone by, and now word has reached on the battlefield. Joab himself, the general who had Absalom killed, by the way, he hears that David is beside himself in grief. And I think that kind of shocked him, because he knew that he and Absalom were never close. What gives? You know, he's thinking, David, if those positions were traded, Absalom would have killed you in a New York minute. So where's the grief coming from? This is a traitor. But we've been in these shoes, haven't we? We understand when grief hits, it's like the days are a blur. Nothing else matters. It just feels like there's darkness all around us. We're lost in a sea of grief. That storm, when we're in the middle of it, we feel every bit of it. But look at verse 2. Something happens here that we have to talk about. So the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the people. Don't let it be lost on you that they won the battle. And yet it ended up as if they lost it. What do those do who lose a battle? You retreat. You're just thankful you lived. And you just sneak back into your home as if you never fought. And that's what they did. Because they didn't get a parade. They didn't get a victor's march. They didn't get a high five from the king and an inspiring speech. Instead, the king is weeping for his own son. And they had this great battle. And all David's weeping has just turned everything into sorrow. Everything into grief. Now look. We are all going to go through times of sorrow. That's what the sin-racked world means. That there is tragedy all around us, and the weight and the effect of sin is death, and not a one of us can escape it. Not me. Not you. So we know this. And some of our sorrow is, let's call it what it is, like David, because of our own actions and our own guilt. But hear me. Please listen to me, if that is you right now. Do not believe the lie that you are alone in your guilt. And do not believe that those regrets that you have are beyond restoration. They are restorable. Jesus can restore all things. The question is, will you let that regret paralyze you in your guilt? Or will you acknowledge that you were wrong, that you failed, that you're dirty, that you're messed up, it's terrible, and as Jake says, jacked up as you are, will we simply run to Jesus who forgives us? Because there are two truths that come when we run to Jesus. First of all, at the cross of Christ is where we will find grace, gratitude, and greater joy. If you will run to Jesus, I promise you, fling yourself upon him. Cling to him. You will find grace, gratitude, and greater joy. And secondly, we might always live with those regrets. But understand that Christ has adopted us as his family, and he has paid the price for those regrets. So I want to help you deal with those regrets. The best way to deal with it is to go deal with it. What I mean by that is Jesus said this. He said, if you go to the altar and you realize that your brother has something against you, you just need to leave that there. Now is not the time. It'll be there when you get back. You need to go to your brother and you need to make it right. So, what does that mean? If there are regrets in your life, if there is sorrow in your life, if there is a disconnect in your life, it is your job, Jesus says, to deal with it. Make that phone call. Send that letter if you have to. Understand that it won't necessarily be rainbows and unicorns and everything's all right. Doesn't always happen that way, but it is your job on your part to deal with it, Jesus says. To deal with your end of it. Take the humble route and do it. But understand also, sometimes there is no way to reconcile. Maybe that person will not speak to you. Maybe they've passed away. And you shoulder that guilt and that grief and that regret day after day, and it has bound you up. I have a message for you that comes from Jesus. Do you remember when Jesus was on the cross and that thief looked over at him and he said, will you remember me? I know I'm guilty. And if you got thrown on a cross for thievery, it must have been some significant thievery. And what does Jesus say? Without qualification, I will remember you in paradise. That thief never reconciled with a single person other than Jesus. You see the power in that? It might not excuse you from the earthly consequences, but reconciling with Jesus is always going to be an option because Jesus loves you. And Jesus' arms are wide open because he died for you. 2 Saturdays ago, I had a friend call us up and say, hey, we're having a ladies group out at the beach, and one of our friends has ALS, and it's pretty advanced, and she's just really dealing with end of life kind of questions, regrets. Just really, she knows she's coming home, and she's really struggling with that. She said, could you come out? I said, yeah, be happy to. So my wife and I drove out to Indian Rocks a couple weeks ago, or 10 days ago or so, and we had this beautiful conversation. We just all huddled up and we talked about what Jesus did, why he came to this earth. He loved the world so much that God sent his son, and his son lived among us and understood our trials and our pain, and he understood rejection and failure, not his failure, but the failure around it. He understood all of what we go through. And then he willingly went to the cross to pay the sins that we could not pay on our behalf. God crushed him for that. Jesus died for our sins. But because he was righteous and without sin, God raised him back to life. And in that faith, we can do the same. And watching the tears come over, the truth and the beauty and the reality of the storm that we lived, and yet the beauty of the gospel that rescues us who don't deserve it. A beautiful time. Sometimes it is the end of life where people are the closest to Jesus, because that is the time they understand the storm is past and all I have is to look for Jesus. What other option do I have? So understand, you may have regret in your life, but understand when things come crashing around you, that does not mean that Jesus has left you. Amen? So we're going to finish. There's a whole bunch of verses that happen. Basically, Joab comes back to David and kind of sets him straight a little bit. He's like, hey man, you've had some, I get it, but you seem to love those who hate you and hate those that love you. And if you don't fix all this right now, your people are sad because you're sad. And if you don't fix this now, bad things are going to happen for your kingdom. I think a little bit of what he said was unfair, but he was really trying to shock David into saying, I get the grief, but get out of it and become a king again. And so David does. He becomes a king. He does what he needs to. And remember, there was a rebellion. So David had a lot of work to do to get the people of Israel resettled again, and to say, yeah, we did rebel against you, but now we're going to follow you again. So he put some people in positions of power that I think was wise. He did a lot of good things to get things restored. And so finally, after all this back and forth, we get to verse 15, and David is now ready to return home. And we see some beautiful things that happen on this return home. It says, verse 15, so the king came back to the Jordan, And Judah, which is a tribe of people, not a person, and Judah came to Gilgal to meet the king and to bring the king over to Jordan. So get this picture. Thousands of people come up to the river Jordan because he had retreated way outside of the Jordan River. And the Jordan was sort of like this demarc line of the promised land, right? And so in comes the king who's now returning, and all these people come up to greet him. And make no mistake, the exact spot where David crossed over back into the promised land was the exact same spot that hundreds of years before the people of Israel first entered into the promised land. That is not a mistake on the Bible's part. That is not a coincidence. There is a picture there of the restoration of God saying, David, your storm is past. You're going to have more storms in life, but this one's past. Welcome back to the promised land. There's a beautiful picture there. And so in they walk. In comes David, no doubt sad and sorrowful. And get this picture. You ever had, not a fight, you ever had a discussion with your wife or your husband? You know what I'm talking about? A discussion. And it gets a little heated. You got your opinion, she's got yours. Woo, we have it out. And then after it's over, after we apologize, after I realize what a dummy I am, and she forgives me, you know that tender moment? You know what I'm talking about? Where you're like, I don't want to fight. I just want to be with you. I'm sorry. You know that beautiful moment, just like sitting on the rocking chair and the storm has passed? This is David right now, okay? So in comes Shimei in verse 16 through 20, and it says, And Shimei, the son of Gera, the Benjamite from Bahurim, called down to the men of Judah to meet King David. And for time's sake, I'm going to kind of summarize kind of what happens here, right? So they all come down, and Shimei comes up to him in kind of verse 18, and he basically just says, hey, look, please don't be mad at me. Please don't hold me guilty. If you remember what happened with Shimei a couple chapters ago, he was the guy that was hurling insults at David when David was weeping and leaving and getting out of Jerusalem, and all was crashing down, walking into the storm, and Shimei was the guy who was making it worse. He's literally pelting rocks at David, and David's people are like, yo, you want us to kill him? Because, like, we can do that. And David's at the time, he's like, no, I deserve it, basically. I'm guilty, and just, so now in comes, this is kind of humorous, so in comes Shimei, and I don't think that he ever thought that Absalom was going to lose the battle, which is why he was so, like, having that moment, attacking David, hating on David, and yet Absalom does lose the battle, and in comes Shimei, and I think he knows the first person that's going to lose his head over all the ridiculousness was that guy. So what does he do? He comes in, he lays down before David, he's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, can you please forgive me? And you know what David does? Something no other king would do. 100% of all kings in that day, and probably today if they could, would say, off with his head, put it on a stake, and let's celebrate that. What does David do? He says, surely this day you are not going to die. Not because Shimei deserved not to die, but because David had walked through a storm. And David was just done with it. And that little thing of attacking and words and throwing rocks and pebbles in the scheme of what David just went through, do you think that matters to David? It's only the other side of the storm that we can see with that clarity. And here's the truth for us, is that the more that we see our own sin for what it is, the easier it becomes to forgive others. You see that beautiful truth with David? He just gets it. He just understands. And then we get to Mephibosheth. Verse 24, Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king. He had neither taken care of his feet, nor trimmed his beard, nor washed his clothes. From the day the king departed until the day he came back in safety. And when he came to Jerusalem to meet the king said to him, why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth? And he answered, oh, my lord, O king, my servant deceived me, for your servant said to him, I will saddle a donkey for myself, that I may ride on it and go with the king, for your servant is lame. He slandered your servant, my lord the king, but my lord the king is like an angel of God. Do therefore what seems good to you. For all my father's house were but men doomed to death before my lord the king, and you set your servant among those who eat at your table. What further right have I than to cry to the king? And the king said to him, Why speak any more of your affairs? I've decided. You and Ziba shall divide the land. And Mephibosheth said to the king, please don't miss this. Oh, let him take it all. Since my lord the king has come safely home, let him take it all. He can have all of it. If you don't remember Mephibosheth, we looked at him way back in 2 Samuel 9, a beautiful passage. One of the most beautiful gospel pictures in all of the Old Testament. You see, Mephibosheth was the grandson of the original King Saul. His daddy was Jonathan. Jonathan and David were best friends, and he made a promise, David did to Jonathan, said, I will never let your house be emptied. I will always take care of your offspring. And David, one day, when all of David's battles were done and he was king, he went and sought out Mephibosheth. He found him, he brought him in, and he said, for the sake of my promise with your daddy Jonathan, you are going to come into my house. But Mephibosheth was lame. Mephibosheth was no threat to a king. Mephibosheth he called himself a dead dog. And David said, you think I care about any of that? Welcome home. You're going to live with my kids. You're now my family. But as we see in this passage, things didn't quite go so planned. David meets Mephibosheth now here, and what does he say? Well, buddy, where have you been? Where were you? I needed you here. And what does Mephibosheth say back? I wanted to be here. I tried to saddle a donkey, and I tried to come see you. But Ziba betrayed me. He deceived me, and he deceived you. He came to you a few chapters back, and he said, here I am. And Mephibosheth is trying to go with the old king, and he's horrible. And now we see Mephibosheth come in, and he's destitute. He hasn't shaved. He's in mourning. For all he knew, David died. This is amazing. And so here he is. I don't even know how he got on this donkey for this 50-mile trip to see David, but you know he made a point for it. And here he is in front of him. What does David do? David doesn't quite know how to sort it out. He's like, fine, well, Ziba can have half, and you can have half. And you know what's so beautiful as we close? On one hand, Ziba did not say, I got half. I got half back. I'm rich as a king again. But he also did not say, what are you talking about? It's all mine. I lost it all from deceit. How dare you? In light of David, his king, and his father being back, what does he say? One of the most beautiful things in all of 2 Samuel. He can have all of it. You think I care? I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't care about the land. I don't care about the servants. I don't care about the wealth and the riches. I don't want it. I don't need it. I just want you, David. He can have all of it. And Jesus helped us understand in Matthew 13:44 that this is the truth. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and he covered up. And then in his joy, goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Jesus said it's the all-inners, the ones that see the beauty of this treasure and its wealth and its worth in comparison of this to all other things, that is worth exponentially more. And I give up everything that I have just so I can buy the field, just so I can have the treasure. You see the beauty? Jesus is the treasure. Jesus is the kingdom of God. And what Jesus is telling you is just like Mephibosheth, they can have it all. And as we close, have you given it all? Compared to your job and your money, compared to your car, compared to your significance, compared to all of these things that we put up in our lives, compared to all of it, have you surrendered it? But also the other side, the regrets, the grief, the strife, the sorrow. Have you surrendered it? You see, a life walking with Jesus begins with surrender. Would you pray with me? Father, thank you so much for this beautiful passage. Lord, we all struggle with regrets, things we've done, said, lived. But Jesus, your cross carries and covers it all. Jesus, thank you so much for that truth. Thank you so much that we can come to you. Those that have not surrendered, Lord, may this be their moment to simply come to you to simply present ourselves as messed up as we are and say, take it all. All to you I surrender. Jesus, it's in your name we pray. Amen.